Hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Reducing Energy Costs with Kaizen Energy Treasure Hunts. My name is Cynthia Selby, and I'm on the Marketing Communications team here at Onset. And I'm going to give you a very brief introduction, and then I'm going to turn over the presentation to our speaker today, Kevin Vidmar from Loureiro Engineering Associates. First, I'm going to give you a brief overview of Onset for those of you who don't know us. We are the company who makes the industry-leading HOBO data loggers. And we've been making data loggers since 1981, right here in Massachusetts on beautiful Cape Cod, where we design and build all of our products. Our logging solutions are used around the world for monitoring environmental conditions and building performance. And we have a global network of dealers to service our customers around the world. The webinar today will run for about 1 hour. And we'll save time at the end for questions, so feel free to type them into the questions section in your control panel at any time. Let's see, we are recording the webinar, and I will be sending out a link to the recording in an email a day or so after the webinar closes. And if you have a moment, please complete the short course evaluation that will pop up when you close out of the webinar today. Now I'd like to introduce you to our speaker today, Kevin Vidmar. He's the VP of Energy Services at Loureiro Engineering Associates in Rhode Island. Loureiro specializes in all forms of engineering, including environmental, civil, structural, mechanical, plumbing, and electrical. Kevin has a BA from Miami University and an MS in Water Resources Engineering from Vanderbilt University. He had 26 years of industrial experience at United Technologies Corp., the Stanley Works, and the Cookson Group prior to joining LEA. Kevin has conducted energy audits and assisted with Kaizen Energy Treasure Hunts at over 200 manufacturing sites worldwide. So welcome, Kevin, and I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Sue. We'd like to cover today reducing energy using Kaizen Energy Treasure Hunts. This is actually an encore presentation webinar, and you're seeing the upgraded version in the spirit of continuous improvement, always trying to make things better. And we've had questions from the past. We've tried to ensure that we capture many of those common questions at the end, so you may not have to type as many things at the end. Again, just briefly, LEA was started in 1975. We have 4 offices now. Plainville, Connecticut is our main office. We have Manchester, New Hampshire, decent-sized office. Wakefield and Rockland, Mass. are our other 2 New England offices. 100-plus employees, lots of professional engineers, PEs, and you see all the things that we do, and Cynthia already gave a good description of those things. So we can help in many different ways, not just from the energy point of view, but structural, mechanical, electrical, environmental engineering, you name it. Now, Cynthia gave a little bit of the background, and there's the companies on the left-hand side that I've worked with. But what's more important than the companies is kind of the positions, and I'm sure many of you have multiple positions you've done in the past, starting out as an HSE manager, health, safety, and environmental manager for various companies. Before you know it, I was thrown into the maintenance managing, which got me involved with total productive maintenance, another term that maintenance managers like to use. I got involved with process improvement, and from that I got involved with corporate 5S training, doing that worldwide, Six Sigma, doing that worldwide, and then corporate lean programs worldwide. And as a result of those last 3, got into the Kaizen facilitation, and while at the same time, for one of the companies, my last company, the Cookson Group, I was the energy director for that company. The only reason I bring that up is like many of us, there's a lot of different backgrounds that you can apply, and you should use all that learning and all that process knowledge to what you're doing presently. And that's what we're going to do here. We're going to look at the energy side of Kaizen Treasure Hunts and how it ties in many of these other things. So, quick agenda. I'm going to introduce you to Kaizen and what is an energy treasure hunt. We'll give you some process steps. What is it from a top-level view? We're going to look at data gathering and analysis and how important that is for any Kaizen event or any energy reduction event. I'm going to discuss some of the lessons learned from working with numbers of teams in a number of different cultures, and then we'll follow it up with some summary, and as I said, some of the typical questions we will just go ahead and answer, as well as we'll then answer the ones that you have specifically typed in. First, what is Kaizen? Kaizen is a Japanese term, and there's many different definitions of it out there. But Kai, it means, in general, change. Zen means to make good, make better. So really, it's change to make it better. It really means to me to take something apart and consider how to bring it back together in a better way, to do a better way, to have less waste, whatever it is when you're done. Kaizen absolutely easily applies to energy, and it's a great way to identify, quantify, and obtain easy energy savings. So why do a Kaizen Energy Treasure Hunt instead of an energy audit? Classically, many people will do an ASHRAE level 1, level 2, or level 3 audits, which are varying degrees of cost and activity as you go from level 1 to level 3. But one of the things you want to do with Kaizen events is you want to fit with whatever the site is already doing. The site probably, many, especially manufacturing sites, and some office sites already are doing Kaizen events, already are doing lean thinking, and having a Kaizen Energy Treasure Hunt fits with that. Kaizen Treasure Hunts go beyond what I call the primary and secondary systems. It goes beyond just what utilities typically like to support. Take a chiller out, put a chiller in. Take lights out, put lights in. That's those primary and secondary systems. It goes beyond that. We'll get into value add, non-value add, actual energy use. And it provides great savings with little cost. A typical result from a Kaizen Energy Treasure Hunt is between 10% utility reduction to 30%. We've had higher than 30%, but that's the typical range. And typically you have 1 year simple payback when you add all items combined. That's what I say with AIC. So that's the sort of range you're talking about. So that's pretty good savings with little cost. Another reason why you might consider Kaizen Treasure Hunts. Teach people how to fish. There's that old saying, you give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach him to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. That's kind of what we're trying to get at here. And I find teaching people, they do the work, I find that so much better than what I call report plop. That's where a consultant will do an ASHRAE level 1, 2, 3, whatever the energy report is, and plop it onto a desk, and things may or may not be done as a result. Kaizen Treasure Hunts get better buy-in. And that's what we're saying here. By buying in better, you'll get faster, greater implementation. Things will be done sooner because the employees were involved with it the whole way. So it really gets that savings to that bottom line faster. And what it does, a Kaizen Energy Treasure Hunt, will give you a very good energy reduction plan quickly. You can get it within a period of a week or two versus months or even a year with Six Sigma or something. So it can give you a good idea of what you can do and how to do it very quickly. So what is a Kaizen Treasure Hunt? It's a short burst of intense activity. It's only 3 to 5 days typically for the event. It is analysis, but it's really, because it's only a short event, it's analysis toward action. You can't analyze things too much. You really will try to solve a specific problem and achieve a specific goals. If you can, you set it up so you know what you're doing and what you're trying to achieve. And you really want to focus on a specific area of the process, such as energy, but you may want to focus on a certain area where you're using a lot of energy, or a certain energy, what I call energy use system, compressed air, chilled water, whatever. You can focus Kaizen events on just one of those things, or maybe all of those things. In Kaizen Treasure Hunts, you manage with a daily review of progress. Again, it's 3 to 5 days. You need to really understand what you've achieved every day. Did you do the right things? what's your plan for the next day, and so on. So that is what a Kaizen Treasure Hunt is. Short bursts of activity, quick analysis, specific problems, specific areas. So what do these events do for you? They provide you a list of energy reduction opportunities, and in that spectrum of no cost, very common to find a lot of no-cost ones, to low cost, takes some money to change things, to some cost. These events will also validate known opportunities. If you think that there's something in the back of your head saying, you know, there's an opportunity there, we should really look at it, this is a great way as a team to really test that tire, to really see is it a good idea or not. These events will also provide input to, if you've got these ISO systems, 14001 Environmental Management System or 50001, the Energy Management System standard. This will give you a list of things to put in there. This will help support those things. It'll really provide input into some of these other programs that LEA teaches and so on, but behavioral energy change, I think you'll hear this more and more. We call it behavioral energy change, but it's just how in a systematic way do we get people to do the things that are going to save energy. So the Kaizen event will identify what those might be. Behavioral energy change is how to get those done. Another way to get them done is Energy 5S. Many sites have a 5S program, and we tie energy specifically into that 5S program with some great results. So whatever the site's energy reduction programs are, and whatever you might be able to add, these events can provide input to these other things very easily. These events might have utility incentives. I'm actually at a site today in Connecticut where we're speaking with the utility about what support they might do for a Kaizen Energy Treasure Hunt at this site. So we're actually having that meeting right after this meeting. And these events will reduce your energy usage. It's just a quick way to identify a lot of things as shown in the table below. You'll see the cost categories. We always break it out, less than 3 months, 3 to 6, 6 to 12, greater than 12. But you can see in the less than 3 month category from a real Kaizen event, $53,000 per year savings if you spend $500. There was an awful lot of no-cost opportunities identified that we took action on that week. That's another thing that these Kaizen events like to do. Take the action that week. Here's a flow chart on how this works, and this has been borrowed from Toyota. This is the Toyota process. First, you kick off, and well, you prepare, and you kick off and you do your initial training. When we say we prepare, that means you got to make sure everybody understands what it is. You got to have an agenda. We have a thing we call the Kaizen workbook, which has all the logistics, all the schedule, the agenda, everything in one workbook so that everybody can immediately see it and have it and understand it and know where to get it and so on. But that's just the beginning. You want to do your initial training. What is Kaizen? What are we trying to achieve? Next step is you have to create and train your specific teams. I already said you might have a team for compressed air. Maybe you might have another team for chilled water. Maybe you have another team for lighting. Not unusual in especially medium to larger sites. But you want to create the teams around those things, and you have to train the teams. I'm going to show you some training slides in a minute on that. So now that you've kicked off, you've got your teams and they're trained, you get people together and you go and see the opportunities. That's where you actually get out there and you identify them. And you collect your data and you see what hurdles remain from getting data or what hurdles remain from doing things. Next step, you analyze your savings. You have to have a system, a good, everybody's got spreadsheets, whatever it is, you can put it in your SharePoint site, you name it, but you have to have a system to estimate the savings and collect it all, summarize it all. So you have to estimate, describe the Kaizen. Each individual opportunity we call a Kaizen. And then you have to see what's it going to take to implement it and justify it. You'll see that the arrow goes down, but there's a big thing on top of that arrow that says value add. For everything we look at in a Kaizen event, we want to make sure, is it value add? Is the energy use changing the form, fit, or function of the part? Just like lean manufacturing. If it doesn't, then you have to really see why are we using that energy. So we double check that. We summarize our Kaizens with the individual savings, the payback, and so on, and we do a management presentation. And we put it all together, 3 to 5, then maybe a few more slides highlighting the top opportunities, the top Kaizens, and what do we need to do for implementation, both money as well as time, effort, whatever it is. You'll see a dotted line there. That's where the formal event, but you've got to have the outcome part as well. You've got to implement. If you don't implement anything, you haven't saved anything. That's why in the Kaizen events that we like to facilitate, we push for immediate implementation and to maintain the gains. Again, not willy-nilly, but where the data supports it, where the systems support it. So when you do the outcomes, you want to implement your actions. You got to measure those results, and you've got to institutionalize, and that just means standardize. You got to make it so that it happens that way, the right way, the new Kaizen way every time. And then finally, whatever you realize you did good, you did bad, whatever, you want to share it, and you want to improve whatever you did. It's not unusual for a site. We've had sites that have had 1, 2, even 3 Kaizen events for the same site, which we've gotten tremendous savings from each one, and certainly some things left over might have been revisited. But that's the sharing, that's the improvement of the process. So as we talk about events, you really want to have a clear description of your problem, your goal, your targets, your areas. Whatever it is you're going to do, you want to be very clear and descriptive. There's that old saying, if you don't keep score, you're only practicing, and that especially is true with anything Kaizen related, and especially with Kaizen Treasure Hunts. You'll see a 42 over to the side there, and that is from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where some people asked this big supercomputer, what's the meaning of the life, the universe, and everything? And the answer is 42. The problem statement wasn't clearly defined, so the solution to the problem was not very good. That's why I'm saying be very clear what it is your team is trying to achieve. So certainly before the event, you want to form your teams and your sub-teams. You might have, again, these people are working on chillers, these are on compressed air, whatever. You want to train the team, bring everybody up to a common level of understanding, a common language, teach everybody the acronyms, all the buzz phrases. And you certainly, before an event, want to get baseline data. And you got to make sure it's long enough. And there's various levels of data. There's macro data, again, the 40,000-foot level or whatever you want to call it, and the micro data. That might be just maybe 5,000-foot level. You really want to think about both of those levels of data, and you also have to get, before the event, a good understanding of your unit costs. What costs are you going to apply? How are they going to be applied? Are you going to use a full blended electrical cost, or are you going to use just a kilowatt-hour cost for certain things and a full blended for other things? And that's understanding your demand charges and your time of use rates and all that. Very important you understand that in advance. So we want to form a Kaizen team. Who do we include? You got to choose the right people for the right reasons. Always, it seems, there's maintenance facilities involved because they're usually the ones paying the utility bills, usually the ones that are maintaining some of the big energy-consuming equipment, again, chillers, compressors, whatever. But more and more, I'm seeing teams picked with mechanics and electronic technicians, because these are the people that program. They can write the Allen Bradley program change that you want done to make something happen. Just like with Six Sigma, you need to involve these people that have authority to change the process. We had a Kaizen event where the team defined something. We could shut off some piece of equipment. The person who had that authority to do that was not involved. We presented it to that person. That person was very hesitant to turn off that equipment. Even though the team said it, the data said it, the vendor said it, that person who didn't have authority wasn't there during that process, made it more difficult. You want to have the operators, especially for these important processes. You want to make sure you have influential people. Those are the people that if you get them on your side, a lot of other people follow naturally. If you can find out who they are and involve them right away, that'll make implementation a lot easier. Certainly, safety and environmental team, whatever it is, your HSE team, you don't want to solve an energy issue and make a safety or environmental issue. Not uncommon for those goals to be different. You want to really involve people with a different set of eyes, and that can be from a supplier point of view, that can be from another facility, that can be from a government agency, or that can even be an internal or external consultant. The reason I suggest this, and I do suggest it strongly, is these outside people are not sight-blind. They, especially certain people, if they've been to a lot of places, they've seen a lot of things, and they can bring all that knowledge to your site. If you walk past something every day, I guarantee at some point you're no longer seeing it. That's where the external set of eyes can help you. When we talk about these teams, a lot of times we might form sub-teams, and that's depending on the interest. I'm interested in compressed air. I have experience in compressed air, and I have ability to figure that out. You might make them into a sub-team. It can work both ways. Here's an example from a team from January 2013. This team included all the people you see listed there: maintenance, facilities, process engineering, because we were trying to change some of the processes. Did we have to recertify certain things? Whatever. We had the operator associates. We had vendors involved, the major suppliers. We had people from other facilities, the value stream managers, the people who have the authority to make changes. Suppliers are different than vendors. We have service vendors, and then suppliers who are actually supplying parts and so on. The HS team was involved, and LEA was involved. This was this site's third Kaizen event. And you can see that that's a fair number of people for that event. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 19 people. This is a big site. This event was very successful. But again, that's a fair number of people. It doesn't always have to be this huge team. We just completed, before July 4th, another event. We had only 5 people involved in the core team. You certainly had that EHS sustainability manager. They're the one driving it. Corporate said you should do something to reduce energy. He said, okay, this is one way to do it. Involved his health and safety coordinator, his utilities manager, facilities engineer, the one who could work with the operators on some of the equipment and so on from a facilities point of view, and LEA. But then we brought in what I say on the ad hoc basis, the supervisors in the areas. Again, they have the authority to change. The associates from the areas. So as we would walk into, let's say, packaging, we would involve the people from packaging in this treasure hunt. So you can see you can do it with 19 people split up in many teams, or in this case, it was only 5 people, and we looked at everything, HVAC, chillers, boilers, compressed air, lighting, all together, and then brought in people as we needed it for support. Many ways you can approach this. So as we talk about training, there's really 2 levels of training. You have to train people on the schedule, the objectives, and the Kaizen process. What is it we're going to do? Why are we going to do it? What's the schedule over the course of 3-5 days? And that's again, just the overall 30,000-foot Kaizen process. Then you got to train people on what to look for, whether it's the systems or the subsystems, and you try to make it as specific to the site as possible. I've been to everything from steel making all the way through the bulletproof glass manufacturing, and there's things that are common but things that are very different, and you want to make your training very site-specific. These are some of the common teams that we work with at sites. Lighting, it's in every facility, and it's usually a fair cost. HVAC, when I say combined, I'm saying you take the boiler systems and the chillers together, or or separate. You might take chillers on one side, boilers somebody else might get. Motors and equipment, usually those are combined under that motors category. Process heating, if you have process heating involved, you might have kilns, you might have ovens, whatever that is. Compressed air in a manufacturing environment, very, very common, usually a separate team. And then we have our office and plug load, which we've had teams in the office environment and in commercial environments strictly on plug load, because that's increasingly important and increasingly out of control in many office environments. So we train them what to look for in each of the areas like that. We will also train people on how to keep score. How are you going to do this? How are you going to identify things, and then how are you going to quantify things, and then how are you going to add all this together? There's got to be a system underlying, and you've got to tell people how to do it. We might train people, like we did in that mini Kaizen or mini team, some other concepts like behavioral energy change, which is, again, how to get the associate, the people, with the right antecedents and the right consequences to do the right behavior every time. So not everything requires controls. There's things you can do manually with your associates. Before the event, that's when you want to do the training. That allows the team to have what I call fermentation time. You might think about some things. You might do some homework on your own. You might also ask some questions to some of the other subject matter experts so that when you're together, you're really knowledgeable and ready for the event. Here's an example of a training slide from a motors team. And this is just for every one of our teams. We try to say, here's the toolbox. Here's some of the things you're going to be able to use to define the opportunities, is there one, and to quantify the opportunities. So you'll see on this slide, I mean, what do you need for a motor? Certainly a lot of times you need a rag, something to clean the nameplate so you can do something. You need a flashlight to read the nameplate. You might be using multimeters. We stress at this point that only the appropriate safety people can use multimeters or full spectrum electronic meters, whatever. It's very important they do it safely for all the OSHA rules. And then you'll see we train people on how to use the data loggers. The average one, you'll see the HOBO 4-channel logger there, that you put a current transformer, it plugs into one of the channels, you get data for the amperage of that particular equipment. Or we'll train them on some of the other technology, like the motor on-off logger that you see with the hand there in the middle on the right. That just by knowing if the magnetic field is occurring will tell you is the motor running or not. We will train people on how to use these, when to use these, and how to get the data, and then how to interpret the data. Very important you train people on that. This is an example from a lighting slide. This is just showing we're trying to let people know what the technologies are. Fluorescent induction lighting is something that a lot of people are not familiar with. So this is just a slide we use to train people, to give them some understanding of what induction lighting is. Not to recommend it, but to say, here's the things to consider. It lasts a certain amount of time. What's the efficacy or that lighting efficiency? What's the temperature and the colors you can get? How good are the lumens? Do they stay pretty much where they were a year later after you put them in? And then some of that information. We will probably provide the same slide for all the typical lighting technologies so that people can make a good decision when they say, we have an opportunity, what do we change to? They've got the basics. They've got an understanding of all the various options available. Now, I talked about data. You have to get data. And this is from a macro view, some of the data. We try to get, whenever we can, the interval data, that smart data, that kilowatt data. On the left-hand side is the whole year's data. And this is from something called Energy Charting and Metrics, and it's an Excel add-on program that's available for download over the web. I highly recommend it. It'll take this interval data, it'll just give you this whole data dump, and you say, give it to me like this. I want the holidays separated out from the Saturdays and the Sundays and the weekdays for the full year. That's what you're seeing on the bottom left. So you can see there's a difference between the holidays, the Saturdays and the Sundays and the weekdays. For this particular facility, there should be some difference between the Saturdays and Sundays and the holidays, but not as much as exists. So that was the full year on the left. When we used ECAM and we said, just give me December. And you can do that with 2 clicks of the mouse, 1 minute of time, and you can get just December, which is what's shown on the right, on the bottom. Now you look at the same thing, December's holidays, Saturdays, Sundays, and weekends, and you can see the scale is different, but you can also start to see individual humps, individual events. You can actually then, with a click of the mouse, say, just give me the last week of the year, or give me the first week of December, or whatever, and you can see specific events. This sort of macro view helps you identify what the potential opportunities might be from a high level. We've realized that Saturdays and Sundays and holidays are different. Saturdays and Sundays are different than the holidays, but they shouldn't be that different when we get into the facility operations. So we know kind of what we might be able to save by looking at this data. Then you get into micro data. So during Kaizen events, you will try to get some data on things. The photo on the top right shows a HOBO 4-channel data logger with a current transformer wrapped around a 600-volt lead and a compressed air system in Canada. And we did that on 2 different compressors. And during the Kaizen event, we realized that we saw every day this sort of event occurring, which was the blue line, compressors operating fine, the red line, the compressor's off. All of a sudden, there's a dip in pressure, just enough, and the secondary compressor comes on, the red compressor comes on, causes the first compressor to unload, causes the second compressor to unload. Then we have this fighting, competing going on. Then we have this second compressor staying on, even though it may not need to at that point, just the way the 2 are working inappropriately together. So you want your macro view. What are the opportunities? And you want to get some micro views. What is it really down at the compressed air generation level? This is even getting further down into the micro. This is looking at compressed airflow. And we put this CDI meter on that you see in the photo on the bottom right, and it's saying 270 cubic feet per minute, CFM. We then charted that, and you can see in the graph, right at the bottom, it's 150 CFM. That's over the Thanksgiving holiday. And then you can see right after the holiday, when people get back to work at 1 o'clock in the morning on that Monday, you can see the usage goes up to maybe 250, 260, whatever, and then at 3 in the afternoon it was 270, as you see in the photo. We realize that leaks at this point are 66% of the total usage. By doing this in advance, we have a Kaizen target we can probably put together for the leaks. So again, you want to get some data in advance if you can do it, so you can know your macro metrics and some of your micro metrics, so you can tell when you make a change, is it the right change? Is it working? Now, this is an example of some data logging from a piece of equipment where if you look at it from just this one day, you would say, it doesn't use that much energy. It looks like it's off most of the time. This is a snapshot piece of data, one day basically. And it's very difficult with Kaizen events to base a whole year's understanding on one day's data. So when you do Kaizen events, you have to balance. It's only a 3 to 5 day event, and you need to get as much data as possible quickly so that you can make some good value decisions. This particular event, you'll see one data point. Luckily, we did not just have this one day's data to make a Kaizen decision. We managed to get some data before the event as well. And that's what's shown in this here. So the prior day, July 27th, this machine was operating a fair amount of time. But we also determined that there were certainly periods of time where this machine could have been shut off. There was no problem. It wouldn't lose its program. It didn't appear to be any production or machine reasons that it couldn't be shut off some of the times that were indicated by this data. So luckily, we had a longer data set than just the 1 day, but you'd like to get a week or so before the Kaizen event so you can then just validate what you're finding during the Kaizen event to get some good data for identification and quantification of opportunity. Really important that you get enough. So here's kind of the steps, the event itself. Typically, we'll start maybe on a Monday morning. We'll do the team meeting in the opening. You always have to do that, and you have your obligatory donuts and coffee, or now whatever fruit and coffee. Then you'll have to train people on the tools and the use of the tools if you haven't done that already. You want to make sure that everybody's comfortable with that. Make sure you've already trained on the process, what to look for, specific to the site, what teams are set up, where they're going to start, what they're going to do. And again, the point is, if you do that all in advance, then you can start running right away on that Monday morning. If you haven't done those things in advance, you got to do those things in the morning, and then probably by late afternoon, you start the process. And that is identifying opportunities. They call these treasure hunts for a reason. You will very often go out into the facility, and now that you're trained, you'll see things differently, and you'll start to say, hey, that's adding no value. Hey, that's adding no value. Or wait a minute, we can do this more efficiently. Even though it's value add, maybe there's more efficiency we can get out of that. And that's what you try to do as soon as possible. During that Monday, you get all the specifics you can. If it's data logging, you stick the data loggers on, whether it's for a few hours, a day, till the next morning, whatever, but you want to start getting that quantification together. And then at the end of every day, you got to do your paperwork. How are you with the target sheet? I'll show you that in a minute. How are you with your daily plan? We thought we were going to do X, Y, and Z. We realized we were only able to do X and Y. We never got to Z. Is Z still important? We're going to hit Z tomorrow, or do tomorrow. Do we still need to do more on X? That's what you got to do at the end of the first day. Check. Did we have the right plan? What's our plan for tomorrow? And when you get out there, that's where I'm talking about this value add, non-value add. We define it as clearly and as often as possible during the training, and you really want to apply it to the site work. For example, this person here is doing some work with a compressed air line. What he's doing, is it value add? Is it changing the form, fit, or function of the part? The answer in this case was no. It's non-value add, so you should ask, why are you doing it? And if he says, just because we've always done it this way, then you can say, well, maybe we can do it a better way. Maybe we don't have to do it. Maybe we can do it shorter, maybe whatever. And then you have an opportunity. You need to quantify what's the impact, what's the savings. So when you get out there, think value add, non-value add. You really want to get the data. And as I said, short term, maybe it's just for a few hours. This is the way the machine is running. This is the way the chilled water, whatever. Or longer term, if you need to, put the meters on today, that first day, take them off the end of the second or third day. Very important when you get out there. Talk to the people. Talk to the associates, the operators, the employees. They're the ones doing things for some reasons. Now, as you talk to employees, you need to, I always say you need to be able to give amnesty. They're going to tell you like it is, hopefully, and not tell you what the standard operating procedure says. You really need to be careful with what is written and what you see happening. So the second day, very often we'll get there very early to see that sleeping site. You can see that photo there. That was taken on a very early in the morning at a site where it gets light about 4 a.m. So that's about 4 a.m. there. Sometimes we try to get in on a Sunday. Maybe we'll do a weekend visit, whatever it is, to see the sleeping site. The sleeping site is all non-value add. If there's no production going on, whatever energy use is occurring is non-value add. So we'll typically on the second day with the sleeping site compare our findings to the kilowatt interval data. Does it match? What did we find that we could net out? What did we find might be some opportunities there? So on the second day, after you've done your early start, you then continue on in the factory, in the building, in the commercial space to do your non-value add definition. Is it needed, not needed, whatever. You continue to define these things. So you want to define and then quantify. That's what you have to do. Ways to quantify or ways to reduce energy usage is certainly get rid of it, stop doing it, or maybe improve the efficiency. There's a variety of things. Got to continue identification. On the second day, you start to summarize your findings because this might only be a 3-day event. You got to have some stuff ready for the third day. And again, at the end of every day, you do your paperwork, your targets, where are you, how was your plan? And we will often measure results. And this is during a Kaizen event where we stuck some data loggers. This is a sensor switch data logger. And I know Onset has some that will give us the same sort of thing. But this will tell us when the lights are on in a space and when somebody is in that space. This happens to be when the black, there's somebody in that space. When it's white, the lights are on. And if you see a white with no black, that means it's all wasted non-value add. So during the event, we'll use light loggers, multimeters, data loggers, you name it. And during the event, we also look from a macro and a micro level. And this is an example of somebody saying, hey, we have an idea. This particular unit is cycling all night, trying to cool the space. What if we just put it on setback conditions and use the fan on auto with the setback? What's the savings going to be? You can see in the photo on the top, there's a onset data logger there measuring temperature and relative humidity. And if the lights are on, and you can see the thermostat there to the left of that. The graph is showing before a certain time when the setback got turned on that the unit, the HVAC unit, was cycling, doing its cooling, bringing the temperature down, then allowing it to go up where it came back on, and then we put the setback condition on, and you could see that the unit stayed up all night until people came on 8 o'clock the next morning. That's exactly what we were hoping to find out, and we got the data to support it, and we could quantify it, the fan savings as well as the HVAC savings for this Kaizen opportunity. So the third day of the 3 days, that's where you organize all this stuff and you get it into a report out system. You want to gut check and fact check it because you've got to make sure it feels right. If you're going to present these numbers, you really want to make sure they're right. You do your final paperwork, prepare your presentation, as I said, 4, 6, maybe 10 slides, depending number of teams. And then you've got to prepare a full team next step. What are we going to do? In what order? By who? When? That's that ARM, that action responsibility matrix that teams kind of struggle with toward the end. And then finally you adjourn and go home. These are just some results for some teams. This is one team's way they summarize things. This is the Team 4, Machine and Motors. You'll see they had 7 opportunities, annual savings of a quantified amount. Payback, they were still wrestling with some things, but they know it's going to be less than a year. And then the carbon reduction based on the emissions factors for the areas and the top 5 events, or the top 5 Kaizens, I should say. You can see some very good savings, with some of the savings being immediate, $13,000 worth of savings being immediate, just having to go identify and quantify what those opportunities are. This is an example of a team that follows a more rigorous way that most people apply Kaizen, using the target sheet approach. This is for the compressed air team, and this is showing 2 measurements. The team set up in advance, and where they started each day and where they ended each day, and what the target was they wanted to get to. So if you look at line 1, compressed air leak rate, it started at 150. If you remember, I showed you a photo where there was a CDI meter and it was 150 over the Thanksgiving holiday. The target was 75, reduction of 50%. The first day, they did make some reductions from 150 to 135. Second day, 120. Third day, 100. They made 33% improvement, but they feel they can continue on. They just weren't able to do it during the Kaizen event to reach that target. The second is compressor efficiency. That's how many kilowatt hours does it take per 1,000 cubic feet of air. And it started at 5.5, and their target was 4. To put that in context, a perfect compressor system is probably 3.1 kilowatt hours per 1,000 standard cubic feet of air. And you can see the first day they made no change. The second day they made a good step change. And the third day they got down to 3.9. They had the data, the kilowatt hour meters on the compressors. They knew how many cubic feet of air were going out because they had a flow meter, gave instantaneous flow as well as summation of flow. And you can see that they made a great improvement with that metric. This is another way that teams will report out data. And this is just showing you the full result from a site. An event started on December 7th, 2010. The 2009 data and the 2010 that you see in this graph, 2009 is in blue, 2010 is in purple, are basically just off one day, kind of, from a week perspective. But you'll see that the event started on December 7th, and if you look at that purple line, at the end of that week, you'll see a big change from the prior year's weekend amount. And if you look the following week, it's up almost 500 kilowatts different. And if you look over Christmas, you'll see a great change, almost again 400 to 500 kilowatts. And if you look at the new year, you'll see it's even less of a hump in the new year compared to where it was. This was a Kaizen event that saved this company a tremendous amount of money, and it was primarily by doing simple things that achieve these results immediately. You can't spend money that fast on capital equipment to achieve results like this. You can't. It was all doing some simple things. So in summary, what does Kaizen do for you? At least 10 to 20% energy reduction. It's been as high as 30. We've had as high as 50 when we tie some other programs together, and always less than 1 year simple payback. That's pretty much the standard. A lot of items with no cost, a lot of items with low cost that can be done quickly, very often, if not always, paying for the event immediately. And with some of the follow-up and with some of these other systems I talked about, Energy 5S, behavioral energy change, we've had up to 50% energy reduction at a site as a result of putting all these things together. So it can be done. This was not a big site. We had 50% reduction. It was about a 20,000 square foot site, $50,000 a year for them. It was very significant. Some keys to success. Don't just round up the usual suspects. You want to make sure that you get some new people involved. I always like to get purchasing and maintenance together because there's a lot of things they don't understand about themselves together, and this is a good way to get them to communicate. Good meeting fundamentals will make your event just like anything. The better you are at your team fundamentals, your meeting fundamentals, the better the event. Training. Get everybody trained. Ensure you have sufficient advanced planning. The more prep you do, the smoother the event. Data. Enough advanced data. Good quantification systems, whatever they are. There's nothing worse than people identifying we've got an opportunity, but you can't quantify it. Nothing is too small. There's always something to work with. Even if it looks small, you might have a lot of those same small things at your site or other sites. And the sleeping site visit defines all the value add and the non-value add. Make sure you have proper prioritization when you leave. What are you going to do first and why? And it shouldn't just be what's the maximum savings. If that's going to take the whole team's effort for a year, that's not what you want to focus on. So here's some of the advantages of Kaizen versus some of the disadvantages. Advantages. It's quick. It involves many people. You get great buy-in as a result of that, and it trains people how to do some of this stuff on their own. I've had sites that, again, after a while, they don't need me. I'm okay with that. They've been trained. That's one of the best things for a teacher is to be able to train somebody to do it themselves. And this really fits with many sites' improvement programs already. There's a lot of disadvantages, though, when you think about it. It involves many people. could involve, like I said, 5 to maybe 20. You might have an outside facilitator cost, and it takes some hours to do it. There's no doubt. And it takes many team hours to train and to perform these things. But in my view, this is the next step many sites should take to get the next level of energy reduction. Now, these are some common questions, so I'm just going to answer them. Hopefully, this will address some of your things. Is there utility support out there for Kaizen Energy Treasure Hunts? There is. It's not a lot. I do some work in Quebec. There is a utility in Quebec, Quebec Hydro, that is supporting these sorts of things at site. They've seen the value through some of the events we've done up there. Where do you receive Kaizen training or Kaizen energy training? Kaizen training you can find many different places. Just put it in the web, or your state has a manufacturing extension that can do it, whatever. But applying it to energy, I'm not aware. I basically have built this through just the combination of experiences. The Excel add-on that I mentioned is energy charting and metrics. Put that into a browser. You'll be able to find it by Pacific Northwest Laboratories or Battelle. Great tool. I get asked this a lot. What's more important for doing these events and doing them right? Is it more important for the consultant to have Kaizen experience or energy experience? It's probably, to me, more important to have the energy experience if you've got Kaizen experience in-house. But maybe I'm biased, probably, but you should have somebody that has both of those experiences so that you can really understand how they work together. How do you get internal support to do something like this? I always advise people to say, what is your utility budget? And then figure out what's 10% of it, what's 15% of it, what's 20% of it. And from that, you can start to say, boy, if we can get 15% of our budget removed, that's this value. That's probably worth a mini Kaizen event or maybe a bigger event, whatever. That's a great way to kind of see, is it worth it, and try to get internal support. There are some other costs included with these events. As I said, data loggers and all that. Our practice, we bring this whole cadre, this whole set of all these data loggers to events so that you don't need to worry about it. Some companies buy their own, but there is equipment time and so on with these events. Yes, there is. I did mention these other programs, Behavioral Energy Change and Energy 5S. If you do Kaizen events, you need to figure out how you're going to get her done. And those are some of the other things you may want to consider. We help people with that. Other people will help people with that. But that's a good implementation strategy. And as I said, mini events. You might want to start small. And then from starting small, you might see, wow, that was very valuable in this one area. Let's work up to something bigger and so on. So those are some of the typical questions. And now I'd like to turn it over to other questions that you might have. Now is a good time to just get them in there, and I'll try to answer them. This is one that you might have to answer. Cynthia, are onset loggers available as rentals?
Kevin, that's something that, I'm going to put our questioner in touch with one of our product application specialists, and they can talk through their needs and see how it is that Onset can assist them.
All right. Because I do not know the answer to that. We've just been buying them, and as I said, most companies I know have been buying them.
Well, our loggers are very affordable, as you know. So, but let's get a product application specialist in touch with them, and then we can take it from there. Okay.
I have a comment here that for Kaizen events applied to energy, people can go to the EPA toolkits. I guess there's epa.gov/lean. There might be something for energy in that respect, so check that out. I have a question here on the metric that I gave for the compressed air efficiency. And the question is, does that metric, which is kilowatt hours per 1,000 cubic feet apply to leak reduction? No, it does not. The kilowatt hours per 1,000 cubic feet applies to generation. Indirectly, it applies to leak reduction, yes, but you're trying to generate the compressed air very efficiently. That's where that metric comes in. And then you're trying to use it efficiently and reduce its use. That's where you need a different metric, which would be CFM per metric ton or something. And between those two metrics, you can truly see your progress, track it, quantify it, whatever you need to do. That was a very good question. And we're getting the question a few times on when will this presentation be available? And I think that Onset will have this on their website, and we'll be sending out a link to it in the next few days. I have a question here for what loggers are needed for economizer controls. The thing we do for economizers is we usually use the temperature, humidity data loggers, and we will stick them in the return air duct if they don't already have sensors in that, outside air, and also mixed air. Between those three, you can calculate your percent of outside air, and from that you can see, is your economizer working, is it not working, if it's differential enthalpy, however you've got that economizer set up, this will help define, is it doing the job it's supposed to do right now. Cynthia, I'm going to have to turn it back over to you because I have another commitment I have to do.
That's great, Kevin. Thank you. If you could put up the slide for contacting you and Onset, that would be great. If anyone has any further questions for Kevin or for Onset, please be sure to shoot us an email or give us a call, and we're happy to help. And, of course, our website is chock full of lots of information on our loggers as well as recorded webinars and white papers, so feel free to take advantage of those. And, Kevin, thank you so much for the presentation today, and everybody have a great afternoon.
All right, thank you very much.